Welcome to the Unriveted podcast, where we talk about technology initiatives such as digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and people. And John, as usual, we have a sponsor. Our sponsor this time is, guess what? It's based on our book, AI in a Weekend, a book that's written by John Sukup and Martin Miller, soon to be in distribution everywhere. Johnny, what are we going to talk about?
Hey, thanks, Martin. And be sure to get your digital copy. We'll let you know when it comes out. So today we are joined by a very special guest, Lotus Li. Lotus comes with us today with several years of experience in the financial and accounting industry and is now the CEO and co-founder of Hive TA Technologies. And according to Lotus, they are building AI products to empower everyone in their tax and finance journey, which sounds amazing to me because I'm sure many people just get headaches thinking about their tax and financial journey. So, Lotus, thank you for joining us today. It's great having you. Like we typically do to get things started, is we'll turn it over to you so you can give us a little background on who you are, what you do, and anything interesting that you think our audience should know about you, and obviously anything that has to do with artificial intelligence or digital transformation. We're very interested to hear about that. So I will turn it over to you, Lotus. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. It's a great introduction, by the way. I am a accountant turned entrepreneur. It's definitely, this is my first time startup. So I started my career at a few CPA firms, and I had worked in several companies in private sector and corporate finance for over 15 years before I started my consulting business. So in March 2023, when GPT was introduced by OpenAI's, Greg Brockman, at that time I was working on different business ideas. And I watched that product demo, and he tested the GPT-4 with a tax scenario case. And right after that product demo, I tested GPT-4 with over 1,000 tax questions. Speaking being a tax nerd, and I was absolutely in awe of the reasonings and the natural language interactions. The first time I saw a tool has a reasoning, and you can interact that through just typing, free form content. And right after that, and I decided I'm going to start to build AI products for CPAs and financial advisors. Ever since then, that's what I've been doing over a year. We've been building AI products, and we have launched our products a few months ago. We are constantly iteration and improving our product.
Excellent. I like your background, Lotus, and it's fascinating to think about using artificial intelligence enhancement to our everyday life where it makes sense. And recently I saw an article, and it was a less than flattering article about one of the major companies in tax software area, the big Intuit, and it was a less than favorable review of how they implemented artificial intelligence. I wonder, have you had a better experience with Hive than the big Intuit?
I think I know exactly what articles you are talking about. It was very interesting to read. This is the article. It was a reporter from Washington Post, I believe. So what happened is Intuit and HR Block, they roll out their AI assistant for the tax filers to use during the tax season. They call them digital help. And the reporter asked a bunch of 16 questions, and over half of the questions were answered incorrectly. And apparently the bot provided either hallucination or irrelevant, right? Completely irrelevant answers. And one of the questions the reporter was asking, in my opinion, is a very simple question. It's about a college student going to college out of their state, and which state the students should file tax return. And apparently, Intuit AI assistant provided a complete irrelevant answer. That was kind of very interesting to watch. And that answer, by the way, if you plug in the prompt, just exactly the prompt I just talked about, and into the ChatGPT or Bing or any kind of chatbot or our product, Hive AI chatbot, you will get a correct answer. So this is actually, in my opinion, this is a typical example that large incumbents, they claim that they train their model with their proprietary data. It turns out actually the fine-tuned model is not necessarily performing as well as the general model. This is one of the examples. Yes.
Interesting. So it feels like even though the financial resources favor the larger companies in what they do in their software development and implementation of AI into their solutions, they may be missing the mark on some simplicity or architectural challenges and data quality. That could be a very significant element. It's interesting to think about the data sets that you have to use for artificial intelligence. Can you talk about your sources of data?
Absolutely. So let me go back a little bit. When I mentioned earlier, when GPT-4 came out, myself along with a network of my CPA friends, we spent 2 months testing this model, right? And we want to make sure this is the right model, because when 3.5 came out, ChatGPT came out a few months before GPT-4, we tested at a time. We don't necessarily feel like that's the right model for tax or CPA domain. Now, when we test GPT-4, this is something. We test GPT-4 with a CPA. Do you know GPT-4 actually passed the CPA exam? So
I've heard
if
that.
you just use the plain GPT-4, and the plain GPT-4 can pass CPA exam, but if you want to know the passing rate among human candidates, back years ago when I was working for my CPA exam, that was a really brutal exam, by the way. It usually it takes like a couple of years to prepare for that, right? So if you ask around, like, what's the percentage of human candidates, right, accountants can pass the CPA full parts at a time, one go, I would say less than 10%. So most of accountants need to take one part 1 year and prepare another part another year. So that type of thing. So that said, when we test GPT-4, we just already know just the model without any fine tuning, without any additional data, that the tax knowledge is absolutely there, and that the reasoning required to answer the tax questions, or especially personal tax scenario questions, is already ready, right? So that said, when we tested the GPT-4 with over 1,000 questions mentioned earlier, those are the most up-to-date training tax training questions. So that said, those are related to the recent years tax laws publications. So the passing score we rated at the time, it was 85%. Interestingly, we use the same set of exam, right? We have associates at CPA firms and tax professional to test, to just say, okay, I compare a human associate with versus like GPT-4, and then human without any training or go through the CPA education, it can get like 70% right. So we knew that actually the general model itself is already superior than most of tax accountants. So that said, when we build this model, we do want to make sure that we use the right model. That's very important. On top of that, so we look at, okay, so what's missing with the model? So we do want to make sure that no matter what we do, what data we build in, we want to make sure that our product maintain same level of the reasoning, same level of intelligence. So that's very important. So on top of that, we look at, okay, so what's really missing is the updated information, right? So the GPT-4 general model does have the cutoff issue. Okay, so the cutoff is by the end of 2023 or whatever. So what is the latest tax, right? And another thing we want to be very careful is we only want to train the model with the specialized knowledge from authoritative sources, right? You want to use the IRS size or state income tax. You don't want to use a random, CPA firm or some small publication. So actually, that's the downside, that when you use Google, we all know that you end up have a long list of the results, but some of the results are from some sources probably not that trustworthy, right? So we want to make sure the data we train are from authoritative sources and with the most recent data.
Wow.
Very good. Very good. John, I'm sure there's a great question for you to pepper Lotus with.
Oh yeah, I am the master of the great segue from one topic to the next, but you did a great job of setting up this particular topic, Lotus. So recently, I was spying on your LinkedIn profile, so you'll have to forgive me for that, but you made a post specifically about trust, which you just got done talking about, and how do we trust the sources that we use. And then you kind of broke trust down. And again, this is all in the context of developing AI systems into, bias. How do we trust systems that could inherently be biased? And then the explainability factor, which Martin and I have talked about at length on this podcast, and just in our professional lives. So I'm interested in hearing your take on the concept of trust, and how it's impacted by bias, in terms of maybe like the data that you use to, say, train a particular model that you may be using, and explainability. And I'm specific on explainability because when I used to do my taxes with TurboTax,
Yeah.
and then when I started my own consultancy, and things got pretty wild with different incomes coming in from different places. I turned things over to a CPA, and I still work with the CPA, and I don't really understand exactly what they have to do when they report my taxes to the IRS to make sure that I don't get audited, or that they're legitimate in what they're doing. But obviously now, as you're seeing, some of those tasks are being taken over by AI systems. So talk to us a little bit about what you think of bias and explainability in the data that you use for these AI-based accounting systems.
Okay, I'm so glad you asked this question. This is a question
It took me a while to get there, but
I'm very fond of talking about for a couple of reasons. Is number one, if you know that we deal with the professional in financial service, the CPAs, financial advisors. So, and as you know, those professionals are very aware of they are highly regulated, first of all. Second, they are just like by nature, they're just very conscious, and they're just a very audit kind of cautious type of professional. And my background is IT auditor, by the way. So when I speak to them, I totally understand what they are thinking. So that's number one. Number two, now as a product builder, right? I talk to them. I use a product every day, by the way. I see some very interesting things like we call undertone. It's very interesting. And actually our early user feedback also include those undertone incidents. So, okay, let's talk about on the professional front, which, on the customer front, because we are dealing with professional users. So a lot of the concerns around AI, in my opinion, is just common. Is probably the same concerns for any technologies, software technologies, any products you are talking about. But there are some concerns specifically for AI products. So, usually in the the financial service industry, right? When you talk about the risks and, ethical uses, right? Those are the two topics. So the risk is usually associated with, data protection. As you know, those professionals deal with client sensitive data, right? Personal financial data. So data protection is huge in those industries. Second is the algorithm bias. This is something kind of a little bit unique for AI. Now, when it comes to ethical use, right? People are talking about, transparency and ownership, and talk about, like fairness, explainability. Actually, is very specific for AI. So that said, I would say a couple of elements of those concerns are specific for AI products. One is the algorithm bias. The other is the explainability. Now, when it comes to algorithm bias, this is something interesting. So we test the product thoroughly, right, before we launch the product. But we do use the model, general model, right? We're not building our own model. So basically, whatever the model spit out, that's what our users get. So although we do kind of test our product every day, we also have internal team member audit our bot response every day, just from that perspective. But from time to time, the bot does spit out the things like, especially around the gender. So users caught up things like, it's very subtle and very, that's what they call undertone. Things could be like, if you are talking about tax situation, is married couple, they both make a equal income, and then the response from our AI system could be like, the man is a breadwinner, the head of household, and the woman, despite the wife is kind of taking care of the family or something like that, but he still makes a substantial income. So there is a little bit of subtone like that. Another incident our user found out is about the user used a case like a single client, female client, is filing, tax return and has some tax questions. And then the assistant response is, despite being single, right? Things like that. So it was actually caught by users. But I have to say, do they come across like just flat out being biased or, discriminative? Probably not. It really depends on the user. Some user probably take that as a little bit offensive. Some user don't. So it's more falls in this, what I call subtle and undertone, that type of category. Because if it's straight out just a bias, we will catch it right away, right? So that said, but this is a kind of very interesting topic. We're actually talking about that. Okay, so we use the model. We monitor the model every day. What we can do as a product builder is we can provide feedback, and we can direct the model, right? The direct AI system do not talk this way. We do build in the guidance, like the tone has supposed to be professional, neutral, and friendly. So I have to say we have done everything we could, but right now it's not completely free of bias, I have to say. Now, when it comes to explainability, actually, this is a very interesting topic. So a lot of folks are asking about this question. I have exactly same input or same prompt, but the output is different. I'm like, yes. Well, that's because this is Gen AI, right? This is a large language model and is based on very different. This is literally is to guess what's the next word versus like, programming language-based software, the result is deterministic. So this is something I feel like it will take a lot of education for users really understand the difference between software and Gen AI product. And when the user feel like I generate two analysis, and what I really like to see is I want to see the analysis is all consistent. I made one small change, I want to see rest of analysis all consistent. I only make changes on this update on this part. But then when second time when I run the report, it come out very different than the first time. So those are the areas we feel like we definitely need to, give a user a lot of education. This is a part of adoption, I would say adoption process for user really understand what is Gen AI assistant is about. And that's why we have product demo. When we go out there, explain to user, and we have like QA questions, and those are the most asked questions actually. Those are, but explainability, my understanding is, Martin, feel free to chime in a little bit on this. I feel like on the technological front, there are some advancement on that, right? There are certain type of technologies kind of start to get there, and I think you can trace like where and how this result is generated.
Yeah, this is fascinating, Lotus. So you hit a couple key words and very specific cases that really hit home. One is deterministic or not fully deterministic is probably one way to describe some of the output. Contextually driven isn't 100% fully deterministic. Algorithmic or program sequence is not part of Gen AI per se. It is it actually breaks that a little bit. So, if A, then B, then C, but Gen AI based solutions using a large language model can jump all over the place and just skip from point A to point B and go to point D and be done, right?
Right.
And that's how it deduces, and it may have a margin of error that we look at and go, wow, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And that's super interesting. We're at a really good point where it might make sense to do a wrap here and talk about maybe some like what you might do differently today versus when you started doing this about a year ago. Would you want to go through a little bit about some of the path followed?
I often say, they all say every single startup founder has a story behind them. That's absolutely true. Every single startup founder has a story. Unfortunately, or fortunately, most of startup we heard they are successful ones. And the 99% of startups, we never heard about them, but they do have a story, right? So if I could think about over the past year, what I have learned, actually 99 things I learned, 99% of things I learned are what is not working. Learning what is not working actually is a super, super important, is a big part of building a company. And only 1% of what I learned is, okay, this works. So what could I done differently? 99% of things what I have done, probably I will be doing different. But I do have, I feel like the momentum is overall is pretty good, and the passion still there, and it just I keep talking to my team. It's just the overall, this where we are in this movement is really kind of pushing us forward, and that has not changed at all. It just become even more it's just become even more stronger.
Excellent. Well, John, this is a good segue to help close out. Any last words before we dial out on this?
No, I think that covers it. It's been really nice having you having you as a guest on the show, Lotus, and thanks for joining us. Maybe we'll connect with you again and see how things are going and get a update on your business activities, if that's all right with you.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Awesome. Thank you for joining the Unriveted crew here. And for those still listening, remember to put the big old thumb up when you watch and listen. And with that, thank you for listening to the Unriveted podcast. Thank you.